The best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
Oh, yes, it does on a Wednesday. And great to have you with us all across America and Canada. And wherever you might be watching on Spotify or YouTube. If you're consuming the show that way, we appreciate it. Lots to do over the next 60 minutes. Nick Ferguson will drop by in 10 minutes. We'll talk football with him for a couple of segments, get some thoughts on the top items around the league. Aaron Rodgers is hung up on helmets. This is always a topic with him. And this year is no different. I want to ask Nick about that. We got a helmet right behind us. There you go. All right. Let's talk about some baseball to start the show. Sam Yarnell is here today. Some of the top stories as we whip through around baseball. And, you know, in what is still a fairly close National League Cy Young race, Sam Yarnell, when Paul Skenes goes out there and gets roughed up the way he did by the Brewers, it does make you wonder, could this impact, and you'd know better than anybody how much it impacts the Cy Young Award numbers in the National League, to the tune of 6 hits, 4 earned over 4 innings for Skenes last night, his ERA going back over 2 to 2.13. Sam, how much did that performance potentially impact the NL Cy Young race?
Paul Skenes still minus 350 favorite to win the award. It seems like the sports books at least are still confident that he's going to win it. Listen, Paul Skenes has these weird teams that he struggles against, and the Brewers are one of them. I think in his last, his last 8 innings pitched against the Brewers, he surrendered 8 total earned runs. That's just not who he is. I think anyone who watches him pitch would know that that's not who he is against, 28 other MLB teams. However, that said, the door is not closed, not that it ever has been, for Zach Wheeler to win this award. I think an outstanding pitching performance, the likes of what Tarek Skubal did back in, what was that, May? Maybe it was late April. I don't remember, but early in the season. Like, if Wheeler comes out and does that, I think he could take the award from Skenes, but I don't think that changed because of last night's start. I think that would have been the case whether Paul Skenes gave up 5 earned runs last night or 0 earned runs last night. So the award race to me with that specific one is not over, but it's also as over as it was before last night's start for Paul Skenes, if that makes sense.
Christopher Sanchez has also been really good over his last 5 starts. He's only given up, I think, 7 runs over his last 5 starts. 11-3, 2.36, the whip of 1.08, 151 strikeouts on the year. Don't sleep on him either if either of those guys above him stumble here down the stretch. I have said this over and over, and you've pushed back on me. Giancarlo Stanton is getting to 500 home runs. Let's just stop the conversation when it comes to Stanton and his Hall of Fame credentials and all of this stuff. He has single-handedly carried the Yankee offense in the month of August, especially with Judge having been out. He had 4 hits last night. He was a triple short of the cycle. And I'll go back to the old scene from Rocky IV, which I don't know if Sam ever watched it, but what they say with Ivan Drago, whatever he hits, he destroys. That is Giancarlo Stanton in a nutshell. He is killing the ball right now, Sam.
Yeah,
don't give me the huff and puff. The guy is killing the baseball right now.
No, I mean, Jason, over the last 7 games, the guy's hitting above 500. It's ridiculous. He looks like 2017 Giancarlo Stanton. He looks like Mike Stanton. That's who he looks like.
He's playing the outfield, too.
Playing big but. There's a large but here, and it's not that of Giancarlo Stanton's. He has this propensity, if you go through his career, to do this and then be horrible for a month and a half, which is like what the Yankees can't afford right now.
Well, he's been great in the
good weeks of him.
Yeah, he's been great in the postseason for them the last couple of years, though. So If they'll take that.
Made up last season, single-handedly made up for how bad Aaron Judge was. Single-handedly. It was him and Juan Soto and everybody else getting the backpack. We're going to the World Series. No doubt about that at all. The problem is, if he's good for another week and then horrible for a month, and the Yankees are fighting for the last playoff spot in the American League, we got ourselves a problem in the Bronx.
I'll tell you this. When they have Stanton and Judge both in the lineup, that is scary, especially if Judge starts to pick it up, which last night he obviously did with a home run. But that lineup becomes a lot more scary. And as much as I can't stand Anthony Volpe, you turn around, the guy's got 18 and 65. I mean, as much as I can't stand Anthony Volpe, you turn around and, look, I get it. Listen, nobody's been more critical. Nobody's been more critical of him than I have, Sam. But at the end of the year, you're going to turn around. He's going to have 23 and 85 or 23 and 80. And we're going to be sitting here going like, I don't know.
We had, and I actually think it may have been this exact same conversation last season. This is the problem with the New York Yankees. This is the problem. This is it. You are telling yourself the problem. He's hitting 218.
Yes.
He's hitting 218. I don't care if he hits 40 home runs and hits 218.
Well, you'll sign up for 40 home runs.
And make 65 errors a season.
Does he have 65? It's a lot. Hey, we had a triple play. We had a triple play in baseball last night. And it came, and now Shohei Ohtani can say he's done something else Aaron Judge has never done. He's hit into a triple play. Let me do my $1 Million Man laugh. Nato's had a nice year, by the way, out there in Los Angeles with the Angels. Triple play. You don't see it often.
16 errors this year for Anthony Volpe.
Only 16?
One more, he'll match his career high. 17, 16, and 6.
Taking
Just
infield.
Pencil him in for 20 errors a season.
He's taking a lot of infield. Does that matter? He's doing a lot of infield practice. Yeah, he's gonna finish with 23 and 80 this year. And that's going to be good enough for the Yankees. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying we got to give the overall picture. Shoulder shrug. Let's do some baseball or some football on the other side. I'll get it right one of these times. Nick Ferguson is next. Great to have you with us on this Wednesday edition of the show. Let's talk some NFL. And if we're going to do it, I love doing it with this guy. There he is. The great Nick Ferguson, former NFL safety. Denver Broncos, amongst other teams, as Sam likes to remind him, Buffalo Bills as well. How often do you switch up the helmet thing in the back? Because now we got Georgia Tech there. Some weeks we see the Broncos. Some weeks we see the Bills. How often are you switching this stuff up?
You know what? It depends on which way the wind blows. And that's the great part of having a plethora of helmets that I can toss up here behind me. I do have some gems that are in another location that are from some Hall of Fame players that I am a little afraid to even bring and put on my set because I'm feeling maybe my kids might do something to them.
What are your kids going to do to them? You've got good kids.
I know I have good kids, but I mean, that's why they're kids. Think about when you were a kid. Or better yet, I mean, of all three of us, Sam is the youngest. When you're young, I mean, you see something and someone says, don't touch it. You know what makes you want to do? Touch it. So I don't want to, tempt them. So I just keep them off site.
All right. Fair.
I don't know. So this in that to that ilk, Nick. I don't know if you saw it went viral yesterday on TikTok, but Aaron Donald and his son were standing in their living room because I guess his son's getting ready to play football for the first time. And Aaron Donald was strapped up in his last Rams helmet and just bare shoulder pads on his knees, and his son was wearing an old Rams helmet running right into him. That is exactly what I would do as a child in the household of a former athlete who just had that kind of memorabilia sitting around. We would be doing Oklahoma drills in the living room.
This is why you don't have it. See, there it is.
All right, fair enough. Let me ask you, speaking of helmets, and let me just get this out of the way. Aaron Rodgers is having this helmet issue. They finally said you can't wear your shoe anymore. It's not safe. Is this thing real about like the feel and fit of a helmet and how important it is? Because it seems like it's a big hang up for him.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, think about it. You wear shoes, don't you? Right? And you want to be in the most comfortable shoes that you can, or better yet, for a person who bowls like you, hey, your fingers have to fit snugly in because once again, you want to make sure that you're getting the best bowling you ever. And you always brag to me about, how many frames that you've thrown or whatever. So it's the same thing. And then think about it. This is protective headgear, right? Something that's supposed to protect his head and make him more comfortable, give him peace of mind. So yes, I would make a big deal about it. And I did when I played, because from high school to college, I had an air helmet. They don't make air helmets anymore. And I wouldn't dare be caught dead in a Rydell helmet. That's what it was back then. But then when I was told, you can't wear bike, you can't wear air, this is what we are giving to you to actually wear, you have to find a way to make it work. But it's all about how snug those jaw pads actually fit onto your face. And they have about 12 little air things inside the helmet that actually pressurize and squeeze your head, your noggin. So you want to make sure, especially you're Aaron Rodgers, you've been injured before. And Aaron Rodgers is going to be somewhat of a savior of the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Tomlin. So yes, I would make a big gripe about my helmet not fitting the way I want it to.
I think that's very interesting, Nick, in an era of the NFL, too, where we see these helmet regulations seemingly being changed every offseason.
Yeah.
Listen, the holdout ended on Wednesday morning up in Buffalo with James Cook.
Yes.
Obviously, we've still got a bunch of holdouts going on around the league, be it Micah Parsons, Trey Hendrickson, Terry McLaurin. What's your general sense on the contract situation as a whole across the NFL right now?
Well, it's pay me what I've earned, right? Not what you owe me, but pay me what I earned. And the cases with all of these players, did they not perform, right? In the case of Micah Parsons, you look at the time that he's been with the Dallas Cowboys. He's had over double-digit sacks. And when you say, well, who is the best player on the Cowboys team, it's not Dak Prescott. It's not CeeDee Lamb. It is Micah Parsons, because you can move him around anywhere. He's not just one of those guys who's just an outside linebacker or a defensive end and whatever defense you're going to run. This is a guy that you can move around, and he's going to wreck shop everywhere he's on the field. Just think about the fact that TJ Watt got paid an enormous amount of money, right? And he's just an outside pass rusher. Micah Parsons, you can line him up from depth and have him in the blitz. So when you talk about players and their production, yes, pay me what I have earned. You draft me for a particular reason. You want me to produce, but then you still don't want to give me the money. And I like what players are doing now opposed to what they did in the time when I played. See, when I played, guys held out. Now guys are holding in and still getting their money. I think James Cook, he showed up, right? He showed up and said, you know what? I'm here, but I'm not going to participate because it's a business decision. How is it that sometimes fans kind of flow towards the team and saying, well, that player is not playing, he's making so much money, it should be about the team? If they knew the inner workings on how the business of football actually worked, they would side more with the players than the teams themselves. But I'm happy James Cook got his money, because I'm sure Josh Allen had to go to the Pagula family and say, look, man, that's my dude. I need him. He rushed for 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
I need that. And as a fantasy owner, I need that too.
That means, and look, and you talk about the fact that fans take the side of ownership a lot of times in these situations rather than players. That's a messaging problem. That means the Players Association, that means players, that means somebody isn't, this goes back to my political background. This is a messaging issue, that they're not getting it across to the fans about why they're holding in or why they're holding out in some of these instances. Real quick, in the last 30 seconds of this segment, or maybe we'll hold it over until the next segment, because I want to get your thoughts as to how this impacts a locker room. Because now we got Trey Hendrickson, which is dragging out. The Terry McLaurin situation in Washington, which is dragging out. And you start to ask yourself, all right, at what point does this start to become a big source of conversation in the locker room? We all know NFL teams in so many instances are worried about distractions. We don't want any distractions. We're trying to get ready for the season. So I want to get from you, when we come back on the other side, I want to get your thoughts on where and when, how deep a hold-in or hold-out goes to where it starts to impact what's happening in the locker room and potentially what's happening on the field. Nick Ferguson is hanging out with us, former NFL safety, KOA Radio in Denver. He does a great job there. Get some thoughts with him on a whole bunch more from the NFL as we continue on this Wednesday edition of Sports Wrap. Don't go anywhere. We take it to segment 3 on this Wednesday edition of Sports Wrap. We're talking NFL. Nick Ferguson is hanging out on the show, former NFL safety, KOA Radio in Denver. All right, going off what we finished the last segment with, Nick, how this impacts a roster, a locker room, the field, the deeper these holdouts go. Terry McLaurin, Trey Hendrickson, the Micah Parsons situation. Give me the player perspective. Give me the view from inside the locker room on how all this sort of shakes out. Or is it just dependent on the team?
No, I mean, it's a dynamic in the locker room, and you're either on one side or the other. And here's what I mean. Like, there's some guys who are saying, you know what? That's Terry's deal. That's Trey's deal. Let him work that out with the organization. I'm just thinking about myself, me getting paid, and just thinking about my situation with the team. Now, then you have the other group who are looking at it saying, wait a minute, my contract expires maybe this year or 2 years from now. Am I going to be treated the same way? So you got two frameworks of thought kind of interworking inside the locker room. Now, some of this will be said between players. Others is just kind of like no one's going to say anything. It's like kind of a hush-hush situation. But it's something that you guys, talk about in the locker room, but also guys who are on other teams. They're watching what's happening with the Cincinnati Bengals. They're watching what's happening with the Commanders or with the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm like, well, my contract is ending with the current team I'm on. That team is not going to be one of the 32 teams or the 31 teams that I'm going to look to play for because I see how they treat their players. Thinking about, we just talked about James Cook and his situation. It seemed as though that deal was not going to get it done or it was going to be kind of pushed into the regular season. But, I mean, cooler heads prevailed. Cook won at 15, they settled at 12. I think that's a great kind of common ground for both of them. But the idea is players are now thinking about contracts now. They're talking to one another now. Well, how is things going in your running back room? How are they treating you? Because before, players didn't do that. Now you have players working together to make sure that everyone gets paid. Just think about that as an idea. If Sam wants to get paid, Jason wants to get paid, and we play the same position, and we're saying, well, you know what? I had about 500 more yards than Sam had last year, right? But now we get a chance to maybe talk, DM one another and say, look, you set the table. They're going to give you this, and then that's going to help me. And more players should do this. You said something before about the PA being more involved as far as tilting the scales, as far as when we're looking at why is it that fans favor more the team than the player? Yeah, messaging is a huge part of it. And that's a whole nother ball of wax that is going to take us longer to get into.
Nick, news over the weekend, early this week, I guess it came out confirmed. Rondale Moore is going to miss another full season, his second full season in a row. This is a guy who has really struggled to stay healthy ever since he was a second-round pick back in 2021. I wanted to get a thought from you on a player that you remember playing with who had a ton of talent but just didn't have the injury luck throughout their career.
Ooh, wow, that's a big one because most of the players and the teams that I played for, considering, just looking at the time I spent with the Jets, I mean, Parcells had a way of motivating you to get out there if you had an injury. So there were not a lot of players that I played with that had that injury bug where they just couldn't really get right. But these are situations, we know this is a contact sport, injuries happen, and then that tag is slapped on you, injury prone. And it's crazy that we call guys injury prone when we know that injuries happen at a high volume. But it's unfortunate for Rondale Moore that he finds himself in this bad situation. And you can just call it, bad mojo. And I'm sure he's thinking in his head, man, I can't get right. Something or someone is against me because they're not allowing me to get my NFL career off the ground. But sometimes that happens. It's frustrating. And as a player who you dream of being in this position, you get mad. You're looking for someone to take your anger and frustration out on, but usually there isn't anyone because you're the person dealing with the injuries.
Let's talk about overreactions because we did basically an overreaction Tuesday because Monday we weren't on. We didn't have our usual show on. We were off. So yesterday we talked about Shedeur Sanders. Start there. How much of this is him being it was exactly what I wanted, Nick. It was exactly what I was hoping for when we talked last week. I said, this is what I wanted to see because now you've got fans in Cleveland going nuts. You probably have people in management with the Browns second-guessing themselves. Everybody's hoping, oh my God, he really is the savior. What's the reality versus the hype and overreaction to what we saw last Friday?
If you were not a fan of Shedeur Sanders while he was at Jackson State of Colorado, you're going like, you know what? That's just preseason. That doesn't really mean anything. If you were a fan of Shedeur Sanders or you came around to the possibility of what his athletic ability could provide, then you're saying, you know what? He showed all the signs and he checked all the boxes. When I looked at him, I said, you know what? Yes, it's the first preseason game. He played 3 quarters. How efficient was he? Did he get the ball out of his hands? Did he keep the offense in the rhythm? Did he make NFL-type throws? And I'm not saying a throw with his arm because we know he does have an arm. Did he slide and he move in the pocket and then he find the right guy and deliver the pass? Yes, he checked all those particular boxes. And for me, it's like all those people who really went in on him and said a lot of negative things about him, I wonder how they feel. But I know how this works. They're saying, you know what? That's the first preseason game. Wait till we get to the second one. Then he's really going to show us who he is. But I'm happy for him. And Kevin Stefanski's and that offensive staff should be happy as well because he showed that he has a skill set to be an NFL quarterback.
What are you thinking if you're Dylan Gabriel right now?
Ooh, hey, listen, I can't wait to get on the field. But now here's a problem with that. Because Shedeur Sanders played 3 quarters. How many more quarters are you going to get a chance to play and impress against, what he did from a production standpoint? And then you got to think about this. Will he press? Will he try to force plays to take place? And if he does, he's going to fail miserably. But once again, he's up against the gun because I remember when that first official, unofficial depth chart was released, it had Shedeur Sanders 4th behind Dylan Gabriel. So there's a lot of pressure on Dylan going into this next preseason game.
Yeah, there certainly is. All right, we're gonna hold you for one more segment if you're okay with it, because Sam's got a fantasy question he wants to ask you regarding the Broncos, and we didn't even talk about the Broncos yet. I think Cortland Sutton is potentially poised for a big season if we're talking about fantasy football. But I want to see what Sam has lined up for you, and we'll get to that coming up in just a couple of minutes. We're hanging out with our man Nick Ferguson, former NFL safety. He does a great job with KOA Radio in Denver on the Broncos. We'll have to ask him a Broncos question, of course, and we'll do some more from the NFL. Also, this crazy story out of Oklahoma involving their quarterback. There's been an interesting twist in that story today. We'll get to it as we continue on Sports Wrap. Coming up in 10 minutes, is there a double standard when we talk about domestic violence? One particular story has me wondering. We'll get to that coming up. All right. Nick Ferguson, former NFL safety, hanging out with us. Sam Yarnell is in the center square. It's like Hollywood Squares here. All right, Sam, you had a fantasy question. Go.
Nick, the most popular name on the Denver Broncos headed into this season for fantasy managers is not Cortland Sutton. It's not Bo Nix. It's not these name brand stars that the Broncos have on offense. It's R.J. Harvey. What have you seen out of Harvey so far through Broncos camp in the first week of preseason?
The one thing that jumps out right away is his massive turkey leg thighs, right? If you ever been to one of those Renaissance fairs and they have those large turkey legs, that's exactly what his thighs actually looks like. And when you talk about running backs, we always talk about vision and balance. And watching them in practice, the drills that they're running from a running back standpoint, it only highlights and accentuate that capability will be utilized this season. And I'll tell you this, if you watched the game this past weekend against the 49ers, you saw exactly what the Broncos want. He started, that series. And of course, since Sean Payton, drafted him, you got to make yourself look right. And you only do that by making the player look right. So he did a great job, running inside and outside, showing balance, but also catching the ball out of the backfield, which is a huge part of what Sean Payton's running backs in the past, a la Deuce McAllister, Alvin Kamara, and that plethora of guys that were in New Orleans. So he's going to be utilized a lot because the Broncos need to get their run game going.
We were talking off air about this Jon Gruden situation, and I want to get your thoughts on it. The NFL is probably cringing right now at this court ruling, which basically says, we want to see everything. We want to know how this thing got leaked out, essentially. And that's what Jon Gruden wants to know. And basically, Gruden's like, hey, if I'm going down, you're all coming down with me right now. How nervous should the NFL be?
I would say they would be nervous, but here's the thing. We've seen things play out like this in sports. Think about the Donald Sterling situation, right? People didn't really know the type of person or the thoughts that Donald Sterling had until someone recorded him. And then think about the other situation with the league that was controversial. You had Eric Reed and you had Colin Kaepernick that eventually settled out of court for undisclosed amount, and you can figure that NDAs were signed. And this whole Gruden situation, obviously, did he say some racist, misogynistic things, homophobic things? Yes, he did. But just think about how this happens. From 2010 to 2018, he was working for ESPN when those emails were sent. But those emails were sent to Bruce Allen, other people in the Washington front office, and other people in the league during that time. Right? And the league was doing an investigation on a toxic culture of Daniel Snyder and the Commanders, but they didn't get Snyder. They didn't get Bruce Allen. They got Jon Gruden. And everyone was thinking like, wait a minute, you're investigating the Commanders, but you're giving us Jon Gruden emails. So obviously people are going to be upset about things he said about DeMaurice Smith, about Roger Goodell, and some of the other comments he made. Yeah, you should be outraged. But the idea is that that's not what this is about. This was about someone leaking emails that they shouldn't have leaked when you were investigating Daniel Snyder and the Commanders and not Jon Gruden. So you gave us the wrong person. You eventually got to Daniel Snyder, but it was kind of late on the cycle. But the first person you gave the public was Jon Gruden. So it's going to be interesting how they figure this out. To me, I know the league wants to push this to kind of Nevada Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, right now, the judges voting 5-2. They have a point. Roger Goodell can't be the arbitrator in this particular situation where he's listed as a defendant in a lawsuit. You can't do that legally. So I think that this is going to get to a point where Jon Gruden is going to reach a settlement, it's undisclosed amount, and it's going to be an NDA signed. But he's about to get a whole lot of money.
Sam, you had a follow-up on that?
Well, yeah, I'm interested, Nick, because you mentioned that part at the very end there with the Roger Goodell being a defendant, not being able to arbitrate the case. As somebody who's been on the inside of the NFL machine and seen the business workings of the NFL for as long as you have, how much of the onus of this whole situation, when it's all said and done, do you think will fall on Roger Goodell and the commissioner's office specifically?
Well, Sam, everything that happens in the NFL falls on the commissioner. That's why you are the commissioner, and that's why Roger Goodell makes from $40 to $50 million a year to take off the anger and the ire of these situations off the owners and put it on him. And you talk to any fan, they blame him for everything, even though things happen from a league-wide standpoint. But that's why he gets paid the big dollars, being the commissioner. But this is a situation that the league definitely wants to make sure go away, because they don't want to have a running list of, well, Roger Goodell was mentioned in this, and who else, who are high-powered people in other organizations. And who's to say? Think about this. Let me back up for a second. What if there was another owner, right? Not president of the Commanders and Bruce Allen, and not, Daniel Snyder, that kind of pushed this along. Now, when you talk about collusion, you take collusion to a whole different level, and you don't want that information to get out. So the best thing for them, say, you know what? We may find ourselves in a tough spot. We thought that maybe this would go away, and we're trying to push it away, maybe even pressure the courts in Nevada to do away with it. But 5-2 said, no, it's not going away this simple. So there's going to be a settlement.
Nick Ferguson, former NFL safety, always appreciate you. We'll hold the Oklahoma quarterback stuff for odds and ends. John Mateer put out a statement today that we'll talk about a little later on. I always appreciate you, my friend. Be well. Enjoy life up there in the Mile High City, and we'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
We're coming back with more Sports Wrap. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to this Wednesday edition of the show. Odds and ends coming up in 10 minutes. You won't want to miss that. So last Friday on the show, we had Robert Littal on, the founder of Black Sports Online, who always hangs out with us on Fridays on the show, sometimes fills in when Sam is off as well. And I was talking with him about this incident with Sha'Carri Richardson that took place back in late July at Seattle-Tacoma Airport, where she is seen on video, and TMZ was the ones who originally released the video, where she's seen on video roughing up her boyfriend, Christian Coleman, who's also a track and field star, as she is, obviously. For people that don't know, Sha'Carri Richardson, one of the big stars of U.S. track and field. So there was this incident that took place on July 27th where she was arrested on a fourth-degree domestic violence offense for allegedly assaulting Coleman at SeaTac Airport. She was booked into a correctional facility for more than 18 hours in Des Moines, Washington. Then she was later released. Why was she released? Because what happens so often in these domestic violence incidents took place here, and that is the person the domestic violence was perpetrated upon, Sam Yarnell, her boyfriend Christian Coleman, opted not to press charges. He didn't want to pursue the case further. So now Sha'Carri Richardson is apologizing to her boyfriend, Christian Coleman. And she did so on Instagram, in which she put herself in a compromised situation, she said. Issued a written apology to Coleman on Tuesday morning. Quote, "I love him, and to him I can't apologize enough," the reigning 100-meter world champion wrote in all caps on Instagram. Adding her apology, quote, "should be just as loud as her actions," which is why, in part, we are discussing it here. "To Christian, I love you and I am so sorry," she says. That arrest took place just before she ran the 100 meters at the U.S. Championships in Eugene, Oregon. She also says she's practicing self-reflection, refuses to run away, but face everything that comes to her head on. For his part, Coleman isn't really saying all that much. I bring up the story, though, for this reason, Sam Yarnell. We so often discuss these stories, and I'm just going to keep it in the sports realm here. We so often discuss these stories as it pertains to men perpetrating this kind of violence towards women, often ignoring the fact that it happens the other way as well. Obviously not as often. But had this been a male, and a male star athlete with the gravitas of Sha'Carri Richardson, doing this to a man, doing this to a woman, we would ask the following questions. And I think it's fair to ask them here. Is this the first time that something like this had taken place? If in a male's case, we would say, I'm sure this isn't the first time something like this has happened. Well, what's to say Sha'Carri Richardson hasn't done this before? We don't know. Maybe it happened behind closed doors. If she was willing to do this in an airport where she knows she's going to be recognized, terrible self-awareness, and people are going to see it, what's to say it hasn't happened behind closed doors? What if there's a history of Sha'Carri Richardson? Again, if we'd say it with a male, we should say it with a female, Sam. But we don't. And this thing will get, unquestionably, this thing will get swept under the rug. It'll go below the radar because there's not going to be any bruises or anybody getting dragged through a hallway. But it's domestic violence all the same, Sam. And I think it's important to shine a light on it, whether it's a male athlete perpetrating it on a female or vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously, like you said, 90% of this stuff goes, not unpunished, but swept under the rug to an extent, forgotten about to an extent, right? Unless your name forever becomes ingrained with it, like, those that have Ray Rice and so on and so forth. Yeah. So I think for me, the thing is, this is like, it's a reflection of just Sha'Carri Richardson is not a good person. This is not the first time, as you'll remember, that she's been in trouble on an international scale with a governing body. Obviously, this time it's much more serious, but right after Sha'Carri Richardson broke onto the scene in the sprinting community, she was slapped with a ban, I believe, from an Olympic committee, maybe for an Olympics, because of a marijuana test.
2021 Tokyo, yes.
Yeah. So I think it becomes pretty clear through somebody's actions that they're just not good at following rules, or in this case, laws, or like societal norms. And I think that Sha'Carri Richardson's done a pretty good job over the last 5 years of showing us, who she is. So I'll take it at that. As, like Jason said, we do the same thing when we deal with these situations in male sports, right? Different circumstance, but same kind of thing when the Rashi Rice not allegations, but sentencing came down however many months ago. We were talking about it. It's like, okay, this is the Myles Garrett thing yesterday on the show, right? Mm-hmm. It's a demonstrated history of these people acting a certain way. You hope that they can change. I hope Sha'Carri Richardson can do the same thing she did after the marijuana test in Tokyo 2021 and come back and better and learn from mistakes. But as of right now, the actions are what they are.
It's a history of bad judgment. And clearly it's an issue with her temper. Christian Coleman isn't commenting for his part. We'll see if USA Track and Field opts to do anything about the situation as well. Odds and Ends wraps up the show next. All right, just about time to wrap things up. Before we get to Odds and Ends, a couple of reminders. If you have not done so yet, make sure to subscribe to the Sports Wrap with Jason Page podcast, available on all your favorite podcasting platforms. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon. You name it. Anywhere you get a podcast, you can get this show. 45 minutes commercial-free Monday through Friday, the audio version of the program. Sports Wrap with Jason Page. In addition to being on close to 300 affiliates throughout the U.S. and Canada, you can also watch this show, Monday through Friday version of the program, on Spotify, where you can also listen to it. So we give you two options there. You can also watch the show on our Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel, which if you have not subscribed yet, I don't know what you're waiting for. Clips from the show through Sports Wrap Shorts, the full version of the show there, commercial free. Monday through Friday, 45 minutes in a nice little bow for you. Go and check that out today. And without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell. John Mateer says, that whole Venmo thing? That was nothing. It was just an inside joke. And look, I guess that's one way he can go about trying to explain it away. Frankly, it's probably the only way he could go about trying to explain it away, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, it is unfortunate that is the explanation, but like I said on the show yesterday, that is as stupid as it is, as stupid as it sounds. And maybe it's just me being a naive young person, but it's kind of what I thought it was. I don't think, young people are stupid, and they are stupid enough to put an inside joke in a Venmo caption that could be seen by people. I don't think they're stupid enough to actually gamble on sports when they're student athletes who get multiple lessons about not gambling on sports and do that and then go on and Venmo your friends about it, make it public, and make the memo in the Venmo say sports gambling. Call me crazy, call me naive. I think that they're a little bit smarter than that.
I'll go with naive. But look, we'll never. The fact of the matter is, we'll never know. We're all just gonna be guessing about it because I don't think any of us will ever get to the bottom of it. I don't think there'll be any action taken against him. Speaking of bad airport behavior, yours truly was caught up in an incident over the weekend while traveling from Las Vegas, traveling back from Connecticut to Las Vegas. This incident took place at the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, DFW as it's known. And for those who witnessed my behavior, I want to apologize. I will not apologize to the TSA agent I berated, though, because of a simple word that was used, Sam. Now, I'm going to get this is going to be a tad bit graphic, but certainly nothing that's like FCC cringeworthy. So every time I go through TSA, you got to walk through the scanner, you put your hands up, hands up, you do this. Well, every time I do that and I go through, I have no idea why, but my nether regions light up red on the scanner. And I always get an enhanced pat down on my junk. Okay? Every time, without fail, this happens. I don't have any piercings. I don't have anything crazy down there. There's no metal in my crotch. And this is the part of the story where it gets interesting, Sam.
Oh, it got interesting a long time ago, bud.
Apparently, the word crotch was offensive to the TSA agent because as I went through, as soon as I walked through the scanner and got through the other side, there was a woman there. And I said, just a heads up, my crotch is going to light up. It does every time, and I don't know why. And this woman turns to me and says, "Don't you speak to me that way." I said, all I said was that my crotch lights up. "Don't say the word crotch," she said. "Don't even talk to me," she said. "Don't use that word." So somehow, some way, that word was the word that set this woman off working at TSA. Maybe she was having a bad day. Maybe she's had bad experiences with crotches in her lifetime. Or maybe she's just a crotchety individual. But I can't for the life of me figure out, Sam, why the word crotch was so offensive to this woman. She called over her supervisor, who I then went off on as well, and laid into these people because they were just completely out of line. Nothing offensive was said. But there's literally people holding there's literally people holding up cell phones waiting for me to get dragged off by security. And I'm like, really? Really? All over the word crotch, Sam?
Yeah, so, all right.
People gotta lighten
that is
up.
a little ridiculous. I'm not gonna lie. I was expecting something much grander. I'm glad that it was just that. That is, yeah, someone must have been having a bad day.
Seriously.
I don't think that that's an offensive word. I think that if you and I can say that on this very show that goes out to all the millions
Yes.
of people, you can say it to a TSA agent. That's a great rule to live by.
I don't know what her name was. So I hope you don't run into her at DFW, though. Not a happy person. Does it for us. Thanks to Nick Ferguson. Thanks to you, Sam. David Ardsma on the show tomorrow. Can't wait. We'll see you then. Yeah, there were literally people holding up cell phones.
That's funny.
I was
man.
like, I'm going to...